Goodness.
This afternoon,
From 1.
Bill Buckley.
Meet the Cliff and the Shadows tribute act who are coming to 3 theatres in the Royal County.
BBC Radio Berkshire.
BBC Radio Berkshire. You were with me last week when I was talking to the BBC security correspondent, my colleague Frank Gardner, who'd had a 2-hour wait to be let off a plane after a long flight from Africa because ground staff at Heathrow mistakenly didn't bring his wheelchair to the plane but sent it to the baggage carousel instead while he's still sitting on the plane asking, well, how am I supposed to get off then? Here's a little of what Frank told me.
Well, sadly, it's one that gets repeated several times, all over the airports, actually. I landed from Addis Ababa on Saturday morning after an overnight flight, over 7 hours, and it took 100 minutes before they got me off the plane because someone had cleverly decided to take my wheelchair off to the terminal. Now, to be fair, Ethiopian Airlines failed to tag it properly, but they left instructions for the ground crew to bring it up to the door of the plane, which they did, and then somebody thought it'd be a good idea, let's drive it off to the terminal.
So they're taking it off with the luggage, basically, for you to kind of collect in the luggage hall, apart from the fact there was no way of getting there.
What possible logic is there in the idea that a wheelchair user would like their wheelchair to be taken half a mile away beyond their reach? When you land, you need the wheelchair. You've just had a long flight. You probably haven't been able to go to the loo. You want to be able to get into your own chair. That's your legs. And the people who are taking these wheelchairs away, they don't have these mobility issues. They have no idea what it's like to be left stranded on a plane for 100 minutes.
That's Frank Gardner, my BBC colleague who had this experience, and now Heathrow say they're completely reviewing the way that wheelchairs and disabled passengers are reunited at the end of flights. If this is an experience you've had, 0808 100 5100. Let's have a word with Mary, who does this all the time. Morning, Mary.
Hi there.
Good to have you with us on the show. Do you have the same sort of experiences that Frank was describing?
Yeah, very much so. So I've travelled for business for the last 20 years as an independent wheelchair user, and I have become very hardened to this, so I can talk about it quite rationally. But I've met so many people that have been put off flying, basically, for 20 years because of one singular experience. So I've had multiple experiences, and I can give you some examples. So
Yeah,
Frank has had, I've sat on the tarmac multiple times for 2 hours after landing, and that was either because, as Frank has said, they'd lost my chair, or maybe the lift that was meant to be meeting the aircraft was not available, either because it had broken down or it was on the other side of the terminal and not where it should be. I've been denied boarding, actually, when I was trying to return back to UK by a British airline, by British staff at the service desk, who literally tried to shoo me away, saying they didn't have the staff to carry me on.
Is it your own wheelchair that gets brought to the plane to help you off, or is it an airline or an airport wheelchair?
Yeah, it's my own chair, and these chairs cost between £3,000 and £30,000, and they're self-funded and they're custom built. So once they get trashed, you are a prisoner in your own home until that is replaced. It's outrageous.
Right. So when Heathrow say, well, what we're going to do now is start bringing people's own wheelchairs to the plane, what they're really saying is we're just going to apply the rules properly all the time that already exist. They're not changing anything. They're just saying they'll do a better job of it.
Right. So one of the problems I've seen time and time again is the consistency. So I've met some really amazing individuals who do a great job of customer service, but I've also met some terrible customer service staff. So really, we need to introduce training consistently throughout the entire industry of a certain, level of competence, and just educate everybody involved with coming into contact with customers. What is required to service a passenger with a disability. I mean, we are first and foremost passengers paying for this experience, and you wouldn't throw £1,000 for the experiences we have. It's just so shocking.
Thank you very much indeed, Mary. Good to hear from you. If you've been through this, When we spoke to Frank Gardner last week, we had sort of 50-50 response. We had a lot of people very keen to get in touch with me to say, you know what, I've used these facilities at Heathrow and they were brilliant. They looked after me really well. The chair was there when I needed it. There was no problem. Not everyone's had that experience, and Frank and Mary are two examples of that. 0808 100 5100. Just before we move on to the weather forecast, I want to have a word with Graham. Graham is from an organisation called Try Before You Fly, which lets disabled passengers and anyone else for that matter experience what it's like to be lifted off the plane. Morning, Graham.
Good morning, Andrew.
Talk me through the purpose of this. Why did you set this up?
Well, it was a number of years ago. We were involved in designing an aircraft seat for disabled children, and we held focus groups with parents and people involved in working with disabled people on board fuselages. And what was really surprising, when we asked, like, what's it like when you fly, people said, well, we don't always know what it's going to be like. And so from that, there was a concept of like, well, wouldn't it be good if you could try before you fly? So you could actually see what it's like in the cabin. You could experience the seating. You could see how you move down the aisle, get to the loo. And so from that, we set the service up at Queen Elizabeth Foundation in Carshalton. And we bought a fuselage off eBay, as you do, and set that up in the mobility centre. And so that was about 4 or 5 years ago, and now we've got a couple more of these across the UK.
And the idea is what? To sort of reassure people so that you can go on your trip without worrying about it unnecessarily, or to actually enable you to decide whether you want to do it or not?
Yeah, it can be both. I think there are some people that have flown before and then perhaps acquired a disability, and they want to go and visit family, or they want to go to their second home, or whatever the reason. And they want that component of the journey, getting on board the aircraft, going through the airport, knowing what services are available, talking that through with somebody who understands the airport environment and the cabin. That can be really reassuring, and it can make the difference between taking a flight or not. And then there are people that perhaps are flying for the first time, and just want to know so they can plan for the journey as much as possible and just have a great flight and have a good passenger experience. It's
called Try Before You Fly, and I guess you'll find it online if you Google it, Graham, yeah?
Yeah, so it's Try, T-R-Y, and then B4, the number 4, and then you fly. So it's Queen Elizabeth Foundation.
Good stuff. Charity. Thank you for coming on. Dan Downs with the weather now. Morning, Dan.
Morning, Andrew.
This is more like it this morning, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. The temperature's actually still falling a bit, though, for some of us, down to 3 or 4 degrees as the cloud clears away to the east. But now it's a fine day. We've got light winds today as well, good spells of sunshine lasting right through the day as well. And temperatures getting to around 11 or 12 Celsius, maybe slightly.
This is
Sounds like Friday night. It's back
with the best live music performances.
and the best artists:
Snow Patrol,
Gary Barlow,
George Ezra,
Little Mix,
Kylie, and more. This is Greg James.
and I'm Dottie. Sounds like Friday night
Tomorrow from 7:30.
on BBC One.
The Andrew Peach Show. Peachy in the morning.
BBC Radio Berkshire.
Back to my conversation with Frank Gardner, started last week. My BBC colleague is a security correspondent who landed at Heathrow on a flight from Addis Ababa and was on the plane for 2 hours before he could get off because ground staff had lost his wheelchair. They'd sent it to the baggage reclaim rather than bringing it to the plane for him. That started a whole conversation here and elsewhere about your experiences of trying to travel, especially through Heathrow, with a wheelchair. More of that very welcome on 0808 100 5100. The government says it's considering new measures for the airline industry to make flying more enjoyable if you've got a disability. Heathrow says it's taking the necessary steps to implement the rules that already exist about bringing your wheelchair to the plane so you can get off. Really interested to hear from you this morning on 0808 100 5100. Just like Frank Gardner, problems with arriving at Heathrow and your wheelchair being nowhere to be seen, something Mary's experienced.
I've travelled for business for the last 20 years as an independent wheelchair user, and I have become very hardened to this, so I can talk about it quite rationally. But I've met so many people that have been put off flying, basically, for 20 years because of one singular experience. So I've had multiple experiences, and I can give you some examples. So
Yeah,
as Frank has had, I've sat on the tarmac multiple times for 2 hours after landing, and that was either because, as Frank has said, they'd lost my chair, or maybe the lift that was meant to be meeting the aircraft was not available, either because it had broken down or it was on the other side of the terminal and not where it should be. I've been denied boarding, actually, when I was trying to return back to UK by a British airline, by British staff at the service desk, who literally tried to shoo me away, saying they didn't have the staff to carry me on.
Is it your own wheelchair that gets brought to the plane to help you off, or is it an airline or an airport wheelchair?
Yeah, it's my own chair, and these chairs cost between £3,000 and £30,000, and they're self-funded and they're custom built. So once they get trashed, you are a prisoner in your own home until that is replaced. It's outrageous.
Right. So when Heathrow say, well, what we're going to do now is start bringing people's own wheelchairs to the plane, what they're really saying is we're just going to apply the rules properly all the time that already exist. They're not changing anything. They're just saying they'll do a better job of it.
So one of the problems I've seen time and time again is the consistency. So I've met some really amazing individuals who do a great job of customer service, but I've also met some terrible customer service staff. So really, we need to introduce training consistently throughout the entire industry of a certain, level of competence, and just educate everybody involved with coming into contact with customers. What is required to service a passenger with a disability. I mean, we are first and foremost passengers paying for this experience, and you wouldn't throw £1,000 for the experiences we have. It's just so shocking.
That's Mary. Your experience, welcome, good or bad. 0808 100 5100. Let's talk to Chris now. Chris Wood from the group Flying Disabled. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Andrew. How the devil are you, sir?
Yeah, not bad, thanks, mate. No doubt good news that Frank Gardner put this issue back centre stage, and it even seems to have had some effect on Heathrow. They're going to try and implement their own rules a bit more effectively now. Do you think this is going well? Do you think Heathrow are doing enough?
I think Heathrow are fine. They're doing some great work, and ultimately this is an airline travelling into London from another country. And that's Ethiopian Airlines, and it kind of breakdown in communication, really. But ultimately, over the last few weeks, indeed 4 weeks now, since I met our aviation minister, and you've seen the report from the government there, and that was on the back of a meeting I had with some great colleagues of mine. And we need to find a solution, Andrew, because effectively, as much as we all want to say this is bad and it's terrible, we need to find that solution. We don't have an accessible train station without an accessible train. We have accessible airports. We don't have an accessible aircraft.
That's interesting. So you think there are sort of more bigger things to worry about than the fact that occasionally someone at Heathrow makes a mistake and someone's wheelchair ends up in the wrong place?
Well, effectively, there are things in place to put that right and make it better. But once you get inside the cabin of an aircraft, you are basically at the behest of cabin crew who are not trained manual handlers. You are at the behest of where you sit in an uncomfortable seat because most people's wheelchairs, the seating system is posturally, that's a word, is designed for their body. So you can imagine for the airlines, you can speed up turnaround times here by a wheelchair just rolling on the aircraft and rolling back off again. How simple is that? Right. It could be clamped down.
So you could make the whole system work much better if you could use the wheelchair for more of the journey or more of the process.
Just like a train, a bus or a car. In fact, everything over land and sea except in the air. And if you think for 1 minute this can't be done, just try sitting in that room when someone said to Alcock and Brown, you're going to fly, half a ton of metal across the transatlantic. I think those guys were not laughed at. And 100 years on, for someone in a wheelchair, we still can't get on a plane. It's ridiculous.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that. I'd love to hear your experience and your thoughts. Chris Woods from Flying Disabled, and you can get in touch for free. Call me now on 0808 100 5100. Right, lovely start to Thursday. Dan Downs has got the weather details. Morning, Dan.
Morning, Andrew. Yeah, not bad for the next couple of days, actually. A little ridge of high pressure building up from the south, keeping things up fine and settled. Fairly chilly first thing, though. Temperatures still only around 4 Celsius, but they are starting to recover. Now the sun's becoming a bit stronger, and we've mainly light winds as well today, so it won't feel bad in the sunshine. The temperatures down on what we saw yesterday, a high of around 11 or 12, 54 Fahrenheit, but I think that the lighter winds and more sunshine around will make up for that. A bit of high-level cloud could turn the sunshine hazy in western parts later on, but not enough to spoil the day. And it stays fine into the night, mainly clear, and temperatures soon dipping away down to around 2 or 3 Celsius, so a chance we could see a bit of patchy frost in prone spots overnight tonight. And the wind starts to pick up a bit through the night as well, the southeasterly wind becoming more brisk, and that's with us into tomorrow. I think although tomorrow will be another fine and dry day with some sunny spells, a bit more cloud around than we're seeing today, and a bit breezier too, but temperatures are up a notch at around 14, maybe 15 Celsius in any prolonged sunny spells. That's 59 in Fahrenheit, so we're almost reaching the 60 Fahrenheit mark now, and it stays mild into the weekend as well. Get more details from the weather app or our website, of course, bbc.co.uk/Berkshire.
Lovely, thanks very much indeed, Dan. And whether you heard Sarah talking on Bank Holiday Monday about the success of English wine at the moment, we wanted to explore that a bit more this morning with some behind-the-scenes action with the English wine making that goes on here in our area. And Rebecca Jackson's going to have a look. Where are you, Rebecca?
I'm at the Fairmile Vineyard in Henley-on-Thames, and there's 12,000 vines here on a slope which is south-facing, and there's beautiful sun on it all day long, which is fantastic. Jan is the owner of the vineyard. Jan, could you tell us why last year was such a great year for English wine?
Well, in 2 words, I would say climate change. We've seen a gradual increase in global temperatures, and that's made it possible for us to plant varieties that we couldn't have dreamt about 30 or 40 years ago. So people are getting more imaginative. The winemaking technique and technology is improving as well. People are investing in good equipment. Most of it comes from abroad, of course, because we're still a small industry. And English wine is becoming very popular. If you ever get the chance, try some. You may find some on your supermarket shelves. Grab yourselves a bottle and see what you think.
I would love to try some, but definitely